Dream big as the ocean. Yes, droplets of water makes up the ocean. You are a droplet. That means you are an ocean. You can be as big as the ocean, but your droplets needs to add up to the ocean to make that big difference. What are you doing to impact your world in your own small way as the droplet of water that's to the ocean? I like this song so much. Yes, dream big because it doesn't cost you to dream big. It's one of the cheapest things to do. I am always dreaming big. I always say to myself, one day I'm going to stand in a crowd where I will have a population where it's the size of Wembley, and I'll be inspiring them. That is dreaming big. And it's not costing me money. But what is it doing? It's shaping my mentality. It's causing me to be positive in life. And whenever I think about that dream, it keeps me going. I don't know what you always think about. We are back with the Footprint Radio Talk Show. And as usual, this is your host, Oscar Bimpong, always in the driving seat, taking you to your destination of success. And I have with me in the hot seat, Dr. Gary Coulton. Please welcome back again.
Hi there, Oscar.
Great. Now, we were discussing something during this break, and it was about success equation. I think our listeners would like to hear that. That was really fantastic. What is success equation?
Well, thanks for asking. Before I explain the detail, we're gradually moving from these heartwarming stories and conceptual ideas, which are nice, but you can't really run with them and do something in your life easily. So we're going to shift towards things that are very practical. So I'm a scientist by first inclination, and I like numbers, but I also like concepts. And in that time that I was deciding what it is that I wanted to do, I realised I had to have something that I could use as a tool. And I call this the success equation. And it's a very, very simple thing. Success equals your capacity to do this thing, whatever this thing is. Run the best talk radio show anywhere in the world, for example. Mm-hmm. You have a capacity for it, but you're not using all of it yet.
Yes.
And the reason you're not using it all of it yet is the things that are getting in the way. Mm-hmm. So success equals your capacity minus the interferences, the blocks.
Okay.
So let's talk about the interferences. I'm going to quote the first verse of the Serenity Prayer, because it has real relevance. So the version I have of it is, God, give me the grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed. Courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. So if we look at the equation, and we have these things that are in our way, the interferences, some of those are inside us. Remember the judge, the inner voice?
Yes.
That's an interference. And then there are interferences on the outside, things that might be, taxes, laws, the way the company works that we work in. There's all sorts of different things that are external that maybe stop us getting where we want to be. Now the Serenity Prayer says wisdom comes from identifying which ones of those you can change. Mm-hmm. So which things do we have influence on ourselves to change, and which of the things can we influence outside? So let's take the outside. I cannot change HMRC's tax laws.
Yes. No way.
What is it they say? There's only two things that are, most powerful in the world, and you can't change: God and taxes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why worry about it? If you've got to pay tax, pay the damn tax, and concentrate on other things that you can influence. So you could influence the way that your customers see you, by the way you interact with them. So there's lots of external interferences or blocks you can reduce or remove. Now, if we look at our internal interferences or blocks, that inner voice, We can choose to listen to the judge or not listen to the judge and quietly change the way we behave. Because we can only change other people's behaviours by changing our own. So if we keep chipping away at these various things that we've identified we have some influence over, we reduce the numbers and the impacts of the blocks in our lives. So if we reduce the interferences, the only thing that can happen is more of us becomes unleashed.
Yes.
So if we unleash more of our capacity to become the best talk show host in the world, that's got to happen.
But do you think people really dwell on the things they cannot change?
They do. They spend far more time on the things they can't change than the things they can change. And I wonder why you think that might be.
Because one thing I've realized is that I always tell people, for example, once people start pursuing their dreams, there's one thing that I've seen is that they dwell on the things that they don't have control over. For example, if I know Gary can help me, for example, my seminar to work well on the 1st of October, but I'm trying to get Gary on board, but Gary has got other commitments and all that, making it difficult for me to get him. What I realize that people continue to dwell on Gary until they get Gary.
They might, but they might have to change their approach.
So why is that people don't change their approach? Because I've heard people that my parents did not help me, my uncle was supposed to take me to uni, he didn't. X was supposed to do that for me, he didn't. And they dwell on the things. Oh, X person was supposed to give me money to start my business. Now those people, these are situations you don't have control over. Why don't people start with what they have?
I suspect it's lack of confidence, lack of courage. Do you remember, or have you seen toddlers, little kids, and something goes wrong? A toddler will always say, it wasn't me, it was him.
Yes.
Even if that him is an imaginary friend. We deflect blame from a very early age because we learn that blame is a bad thing. So we don't want the consequences of blame. So if we go back to your examples, you'd like me to come and assist you in some way, not necessarily on the day, but help you, and I'm busy. What have you done for me that would make me want to help you?
That's another question.
Another person, an organisation. The way you approach somebody is from a position of being an adult, not a toddler. I'm not accusing you of being a toddler, you never approached me like that. But it's also a thing about, we're very good at building glass ceilings above ourselves. There's a brilliant book by a guy called Gay Hendricks, and it's called The Big Leap. And in that he says that people are happy operating at certain levels. So one is, you can be really excellent at something, but then you find reasons not to be a genius at it. And usually you deflect on other people.
Yes.
They're the cause of you not operating at genius level.
Exactly.
So,
and I think that is really holding on people, is causing people to hold on without taking that step.
So the biggest control one has in your own life is ourselves. And it's that balance you need between becoming too judgmental and not changing. So if you need to change, work out how to change using your strengths and stop listening to the inner saboteur, the judge, who's always going to lie to you.
Yes.
Well-meaning, but he's always going to restrict you and stay under that glass ceiling that it's trying to build and reinforce and reinforce.
Yes. I always tell people you are the first limitation to your success.
Correct.
People think it's the outside world, but you are the first limitation.
And
because doors only open when you take that step.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad person just because you're limiting yourself. Sometimes it needs another person, a fairly tough, love, compassionate friend to say, this is what I'm seeing, and yet there's so much left in you.
Yes.
I know that there's masses inside you that you could do if you wanted to, but you're not seeing it yet. And a tough, compassionate friend would say to you, this is what I see, Have you ever thought of doing this?
Mhm.
And then it's down to you to decide, yeah, that feels right, I'll have a go at that.
Yes.
And the success equation is simply saying, look for the things that are holding you back, make small adjustments to start with, not huge changes. Whatever works for you, keep doing it. If you keep focusing on the moment, like David Frost said at the beginning,
Yes.
the consequence of you focusing on the removing of these interferences is inevitably a measure of success.
Yes.
It can't. How could it get worse if you're removing things in your way? It can't get worse.
Wow, 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 wow. That's really sounding interesting. Gary is trying to tell you, don't wait on people. Start with what you have. Start pursuing your dreams. Keep pushing. Keep doing what you love doing. That is the only way doors open. You cannot stay where you are forever. The step that you take can really make a difference in your life. Now, Gary, you said you there are 5 pillars of success.
Yeah. What you'll find with all coaches is they come up with a system that helps them explain it to themselves first. So I'd looked at all sorts of models for strategic planning, and because I help business people build businesses, and most of them are like straight lines, or I don't know whether you've seen the Indian rope trick, where the fakir is playing his horn, and a rope suddenly appears out of a basket and it goes straight upwards. That's most people's views of a strategic plan over 3 years, 5 years. The problem is if you've got a high wind, it'll blow the rope over. So I suddenly thought, well, it's got to be much more foundation. Our plans for our dreams for the future have got to be built on solid foundation. So I came up with this idea of, well, you need pillars. How many pillars do you need, and what are they filled with? What kind of concrete are they in? So the first pillar is the pillar of our core values. And this is the things in the end that we would stop a bullet for on behalf of our loved ones. They're the things that are non-negotiable in life. And everybody's are different. And they have to be the values that you believe in, not that you think somebody else thinks you should have.
Yes.
And that's the problem with many organisations. They publish core values thinking, oh, that's what the public will want of us. And then they fail to live up to them.
Yeah.
You can think of Volkswagen recently, Mitsubishi, and all the cheating that's gone on. And that's public knowledge, of course. So, core values. And I'm hoping that after this event, you and I can set up a means to for people to try and test their core values. Not only is it a pillar, but you can also use it as a guide, almost like a signpost. You can say to yourself, day in, day out, when you've got a decision to make, is how well aligned is this with my core values?
Okay.
Because it will always blow back in your face.
Okay. So you mean that, one, for example, if I'm religious, every decision I make, my religion is my core value. So every decision I make should be aligned to that.
If that is one of your core values, totally.
For example, my family. If my family have got certain core values, it means that whatever decision I make should really reflect on that, isn't it?
Yes. As long as one recognises that just because you have a core value, it's not necessarily shared by somebody else. And we have to respect one another's core values and find the win between the two. How closely aligned can we be?
So, do you think core values really affect our business?
Completely.
In which way?
Well, I'll use the example of Volkswagen last year, or was it this year even? If you look on their public website, they have published core values that everybody's supposed to follow. One of them is honesty and transparency. Yet, they generated software to cheat the emissions rules in the United States. How is that honest and transparent?
Yes. So they've gone against their core values.
That's right. So they have the core value, they tell you they've got them, but their behaviours aren't aligned with them. And the consequences are the chief executive at the time was fired their share value went down by a third. So it can tell you that people outside the organisation and inside really do care what your values are and how well you behave in accordance to them.
Wow.
So the central pillar is core values. Then there's another pillar which we've talked about, which is awareness. And that's awareness of yourself and awareness of others. Now that can be as an individual, but it could be a team within an organisation. It could be departments, say how aware is marketing of the needs of distribution. It can be whole organisation, how aware is it of its market and its customers around it. Excuse me. And we touched upon how important it is, but I'd like to bring it into the world of business. There was a report out several years ago, I think it was by Forbes, which interviewed 1,000 chief executives, mostly in the US, and they asked them what the most important characteristics of a leader were. So this could be a big business, it could be somebody who's beginning to start on a small business. What were the main personal characteristics? 70% made self-awareness number one.
Okay.
Above any skill, any business skill, accounting, finance, HR, above everything else, self-awareness.
So what do you mean by self-awareness from a business perspective?
Self-awareness is, are you aware of your emotions? Are you aware of the behaviours you exhibit because of your emotions? Do you understand the consequences of pressure and stress? Do you have the voices in your head?
So
it's who you are. Are you aware of who you are,
yes,
and you're comfortable in your own skin? That's self-awareness.
So does it mean that in actual sense, leaders or CEOs sometimes they lose their self-awareness?
Completely. And it's frightening. I mean, there was another survey done relatively recently that I think it was 15% of CEOs in a random survey showed psychopathic tendencies.
Wow.
Now, the definition of a psychopath is somebody who has no self-awareness and no awareness of others. Yet they're very powerful in leadership positions in certain types of culture. And I mean business culture, not ethnic or national cultures. So awareness of yourself, particularly with modern kinds of leadership, is absolutely crucial, because people are becoming more and more sophisticated,
Yes.
particularly our younger generation.
Exactly.
And they are not accepting the I tell you
No.
kind of way of leading, if it ever was a kind of leading. So forget
that autocratic way of
it's where's it? Well, I suppose there are, in certain firefighting situations, the alarm's going on. You get out this building. Probably that's okay as a telling kind of approach, but a lot came before that in educating people why, when the bell goes, you should be getting out. You shouldn't need to be told in the moment. Pillar 3, so we've got core values,
yeah, self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Pillar 3 is the thing that everybody overfills, which is skills and know-how. We tend to think the more we learn, the more we can do. Well, to a degree, but you can't build an entire business just on skills, because you've got to be self-aware, we know that. You've got to have core values. The 4th pillar is why reinvent the wheel, which is what does excellence already look like in the area that you want to pursue. So go and find out who your competition is. What do they do brilliantly well? And then mimic it without breaking any laws, of course, because they're already doing that really well. Then find your distinctiveness. The last pillar is what I call your guiding coalition. Who's in your room and who's on side and who's positive, and they're giving you really good information and good insight, personal support. And these can be even people who are dead. You know, that great uncle you might have had. What would he have said? what would he have asked of me? And if there's something missing, you actively go and seek that kind of person who can fill the gap. With these 5 pillars, now you can achieve anything. Absolutely anything. Because that set of characteristics will allow you to identify the interferences, remove them, and unleash whatever's inside you to achieve.
Inside you. That really sounds powerful. So it's about core values, awareness, self-awareness, skills and know-how. What does excellence? That's excellence and your guiding coalition. Now about skills and know-how, I really want to know more about that because does it come naturally or you have to develop it?
I would say before you ever embark on what skill do I need, what know-how, what understanding, is to develop the skill of curiosity. And we touched on that the last time we worked together. Curiosity drives the collection of information. So you might say, I'm really curious what it's like to become a radio producer. I've never done it before, but I'm really be interested. So you go and find somebody who is and have a conversation. You will have already learnt something. You can then decide, yeah, I really quite like this business. Now I need to go on a course. And if you go on to a course and your attitude is entertain me, fill my brain, well, you might do okay. But if you go saying, I want to be able to second guess what this guy is going to tell me, or woman, and constantly test them in your own mind, that's what curiosity is. And it's a fabulous fuel for learning.
So you think curiosity is a powerful tool for you
Yes.
to upgrade your skills all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking in your studio. I've got a big black mic next to me with a foam rubber thing on. Yeah, I've got another mic that's silver with a wire cage on it. Well, that's interesting. I don't know why it's interesting.
Yes.
But
Why is that one got the foam? Why hasn't that one got the foam?
So if you look at life like that, and I look at life like I did when I was 6 years old, that's interesting. Yeah. You might never find the answer, but you could never find the answer if you didn't find it fascinating in the beginning.
Yes.
After all, that's how we find our partners. There's something just that little bit
Unusual
fascinating.
about them.
Yeah, unless it's an arranged marriage, which is a whole different game. But even then, you can be curious about your new partner.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps relationships alive, is your curiosity for the new, because you never actually know anybody else, because you never actually know yourself, but you can be curious. And if you take that attitude into everything in your life, you'll never be bored, and your skills and know-how will just expand exponentially.
Are we that curious?
We learn to stop being curious. So again, I go back to the baby. There's a genetic drive to get up on 2 feet, but they're very curious about the feedback they get when they fail. They go, instinctively they'll fall over and they go, that was interesting. Now if I adjust my next attempt in this way, will that work? They're not necessarily thinking consciously, but that's what their bodies are doing. They're curious about cause and effect. So next time you go for a walk in the park, rather than be worried about what's happening in your life before or in the future, look at the green and say, how many greens can I see? How many different shades of green are there simply on a lawn? Even though every leaf is pretty much similar, you'll see different green. And then you might say, well, if I go up to a tree and I run the leaf through my fingers, I wonder what sensation that is. And then you do it for another leaf and another leaf. So you can train curiosity back, even though in our educational system, I think we absolutely suppress curiosity, because we teach kids, learn this, regurgitate it, we'll give you a mark, and that's how you're measured.
And that is not curiosity, isn't it?
No. And the only reason that we're actually on the planet now is because humans are constantly curious and constantly questing for something new.
So it means that technology, for example, is being brought about through curiosity, right?
Correct. There's a great example. Let's say, rather than technology, because it's incredibly complex, you offered me a cup of coffee before we came on air, and I just want you to think, next time you go into your coffee shop of preference, at the risk of naming a particular supplier, how many people did it take to put that cup of coffee in your hand? How many? There's the barista.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's just look at the coffee. Where was it grown? How many people actually grow that coffee bean that ended up in your coffee? Well, there might be 10. Okay. How many people are involved in roasting it? How many people are involved in inventing the roasting machine?
We don't go that far, isn't it?
It's
All we think about is that coffee in front of us and
because
enjoying
we're curious. I'd love to do either.
So this curiosity, you are really bringing a different dimension to it. That we don't really think that far about how things
Embrace
happen.
your inner child is what I'm trying to say. Stop slapping it down. The people that are successful are eternal children as well as adults. So they learn to give their internal child time and support to be curious about the world like they were when they were kids. And then they step back and go, okay, that's a really interesting beginning of an idea. Now as the grown-up me, I'll plan to see whether or not I can bring it into the world, this idea. And you can play with...
So curiosity is more about asking the right questions, right?
It's about observing the world and then asking the question. So the scientific process runs something like this, and it's a great way for living your life. We read loads of things about the research in a particular area, and then we go, nobody's ever said this before. Nobody knows the answer to this question. I wonder what the answer is. So you then create an experiment that will test that question. You run the experiment, you get results, and if you're really lucky, you've been clever enough to run the right experiment, and the results will tell you whether your idea, your hypothesis, was right or wrong. If it's right, you can move on and ask the next question. If it's wrong, you go, maybe the original question was a bit off whack, so I've got to ask a different question. So in life, why not consider everything we do as an experiment? Because every action we take, nobody's ever taken before in exactly the same way. So we can't really predict the results. So curiosity, creating questions, as you say, we have an idea, we test the idea. You're running this day. It's an experiment. You might get incredible results, or they might be slightly disappointing. Either way, you'll learn from it, and the next version will be much better.
Powerful. But I'm really enjoying this, and I think time is really running fast, but we are getting there slowly. We're going to go for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Gary Coulton. What I always say in every commercial break is that call a friend to listen to the third segment of the program, because it's getting interesting and I'm really learning. Yes.